Today was supposed to be the day of the NHL Draft Lottery. Obviously, since that's not taking place, I thought it'd be a good day to do a simulation and a top 15 mock draft. We'll jump into that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned today, we're going to be doing an NHL Draft Lottery simulation. Since it was supposed to be the day of the actual Draft Lottery, today would be the day I was hoping that we'd find out who's actually picking first overall, what the actual order would be for the non-playoff teams for the first 15 selections. And unfortunately, because of the NHL pause, that's not going to be taking place, and we really don't know at this point when it will. So for right now, we're stuck on going with what ifs and playing with simulators to try to determine what might actually go down for the 2020 NHL draft. So I've conducted a simulation to determine the order for the first 15 selections. I'll be showing you that here momentarily. The last time we did one of these videos, I used the most recent rankings from TSN's Craig Button, and obviously there was a lot of comments indicating that they really weren't a fan of his ranking selections, and I will admit there certainly were some very different and odd choices of players that he had in there. And I just went with it to have something different here to discuss in a video. But for right now, the NHL Central Scouting has put out their final rankings, so I've looked at those. I've also looked at the most recent ones by other TSN guys like Bob McKenzie, done my own research and kind of to put everything together for my own draft order here. So this is basically my own opinion for where these players are going to go based on team need as well, based on how the simulation turned out. So these are my opinions for the top 15 picks. And let's jump in here and see who won the lottery and is picking first overall. Winning the lottery and picking first overall is the Detroit Red Wings. So I believe that of all the simulations we've run, this is the first time that the team with the worst record actually came out first here. So good for Detroit in this scenario. And of course, they would select Alexis Lafreniere. He's been the consensus #1 overall pick really for the entire last year or more. He's a dominant physical winger who can be a franchise-altering player, in my opinion. Certainly tore up the QMJHL this past year. Had a terrific season for Rimouski. Awesome tournament at the World Juniors for Team Canada. Was a dominant player and should have no doubt here to be the first overall pick, in my opinion. Next up, again being lucky in this draft lottery simulation, is the Montreal Canadiens winning the lottery and getting the second overall pick. And they'd be selecting the top center, Quinton Byfield from Sudbury of the Ontario Hockey League. Byfield could be that dominant, large #1 center that they're so desperately looking for. I think he would go #2 overall to just about any team, although German-born players, Tim Stutzle certainly is giving him a competition here for sure, but I think any team looking for a center iceman definitely going to be taking Byfield, and Montreal would be that team. Clearly, if they can go with Byfield and Kotkaniemi 1-2 down the middle for the next number of years, that would be a huge move in the right direction for the Habs. Next up, also winning one of the lottery spots, is the Arizona Coyotes getting the third overall selection, and I'd have them selecting German player Tim Stutzle, who has been ranked as the top international player by NHL Central Scouting. He's been a solid riser in this draft, in the draft rankings all season long. Draw some comparison to a guy like Matthew Barzal of the New York Islanders. He's got very impressive speed, great puck handling, and great vision. Great attitude, works really hard, and certainly looks like he could become a dominant winger at the NHL level. And just about any of these teams, I think, would be happy to get him. But certainly giving a bit of a rivalry here to Byfield, and depending on who wins that #2 overall pick, wouldn't be shocked to see Stutzle go a little higher than #3. Next up at #4, we have the Ottawa Senators. Now, of course, this simulation was not kind to the Senators, but really, we shouldn't have too many issues here. They get 2 picks in the top 5. They're picking #4 and #5 consecutively here. #4 overall, they'd be taking the top defenseman in the draft from the Erie Otters of the OHL, Jamie Drysdale. Drysdale is drawing some comparison to a guy like Cale Makar of the Colorado Avalanche, an absolute potential stud defenseman who's an excellent skater. He can drive the play, he can play in the power play, and really have a really high-end offensive game and playmaking ability that makes him dangerous pretty much every time he's on the ice. But he's also an incredibly smart player and somewhat sound defensively for his age. I'm sure, like most defensemen coming to the NHL, his defensive side of the game will likely need a little bit of work, but he certainly has potential to be a very special player. Can you imagine him paired up with a guy like Thomas Chabot on the back end for the Senators, along with a guy like Eric Brandstrom? They could really form quite a dynamic blue line for many years to come. Now, as I mentioned, the Senators are also picking 5th overall. Of course, they had 2 picks, one being their own and the other being from the San Jose Sharks. With the 5th overall pick, I have them selecting from the Ottawa 67s in the OHL, Marco Rossi, who's certainly been another steady riser in this year's NHL draft rankings. ROSSI might be a little bit smaller at 5'9", but his incredibly great playmaker, solid forward, draws some comparison to a guy like a Claude Giroux of the Philadelphia Flyers. He's a highly skilled offensive player. It's a great skater. It's hard to knock off the puck, even though he's not overly big. He is strong on his skates, and he can certainly offers great puck control, moving at high speed. He's got a hard, accurate shot with a great release as well, and certainly he's not afraid to play physical, even though he's not an overly big guy. So ROSSI is a player who would fit in quite nicely in the Senators system. Next up at 6 overall, we have the Los Angeles Kings holding this selection, and they would select Swedish-born player Alexander HOLTZ. Now, HOLTZ, again, like some of these players, not overly big, 5'11" and a half. He's put up 16 points in 35 games this past year playing in Sweden. HOLTZ is a very skilled offensive player, had a pretty decent showing at the World Junior Championships. Pretty much what you'd call a true and natural goal scorer. It's an impressive shot, smart player, great vision. His skating, probably not quite as good as some of these players ranked ahead of him, but overall a really solid forward who the Kings would be very thankful to get in this draft. Holding the next selection is the Anaheim Ducks, and I have them selecting another Canadian-born player from the OHL, center iceman Cole Perfetti, playing for Saginaw. Perfetti is a really smart goal-scoring type of center, got a great shot, really offensively gifted type of forward in my opinion here. Now Cole Perfetti was ranked 5th among North American skaters by NHL Central Scouting. Personally, I'd put him just one spot higher, just a little bit more myself. He draws some comparisons to a guy like a Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, according to the opinions of NHL Central Scouting, due to his hockey sense and playmaking, as well as scoring ability. Great puck handler, great vision, and overall be another tremendous forward to add to the group of guys in the Anaheim Ducks system. Next up, selecting 8th overall, we have the New Jersey Devils, and I think they're going to be the ones to select the top goalie in this draft. Russian goaltender Yaroslav Askarov, 6'3", played in 18 games this year with a 2.45 goals against average and a .920 save percentage during league play over in Russia. Didn't have a great World Junior Championships for Team Russia, but overall that should not take away from his abilities. He's still considered a technically sound goalie with great instincts, good with communication with his defense. He has a very quick glove hand, overall really solid goaltending prospect. Draws some comparisons to even a guy like Pekka Rinne, maybe a little bit of Andrei Vasilevsky. Certainly a franchise-altering potential in this goaltender, and the Devils are going to be in need of that with their goaltending situation, so it makes a lot of sense, in my opinion, for them to take Askarov with this selection. Next up at 9th overall, we have the Buffalo Sabres, and I have them going to Finland for this selection, taking the 3rd best ranked skater in international skaters by NHL Central Scouting, Anton Lundell. And now Lundell's a left shot center iceman, 6'1", about 185 pounds. He put up 28 points in 44 league games over in Finland this year. Unfortunately, was not able to play at the World Juniors due to an injury, so that certainly did suffer, a little bit of a drop in his rankings for the year. He seems to be one of those players that there's a variety of opinions out there on, depending on what list you're looking at. He is certainly, a little bit more of a polarizing figure and goes up and down depending on what list you're looking at. But personally, this is where I think he's going to go. I think Lundell will be a great fit in Buffalo. They need some help at center behind Jack Eichel. Other guys like Casey Middlestat may not be providing that. Of course, they have Dylan Cousins in the system as well. But of course, one of these guys like Lundell could even eventually be a winger at the NHL. So there's no harm in taking the center iceman. I think he'd be a great fit here with the Sabres. Next up, selecting 10th overall, we have the Chicago Blackhawks, and we have them selecting Swedish forward Lucas Raymond, who's been playing for Frölunda in the Swedish leagues, 5'11", 170 pounds. Didn't have a terrific season, but many people say he did get better as the season went along. He put up 10 points in 33 games played over there, but Lucas Raymond, for the most part, is regarded as a pretty well-rounded, highly skilled winger with exceptional hockey sense. He's got good speed, good hands, pretty solid defensively as well. Tough to play against, which is certainly, maybe not going to be as high end of a player as some of these guys, but certainly would be a terrific fit, and maybe as a little bit lesser role with the Blackhawks. I think he would fit in quite nicely with the mix of players that they have in their system currently. Next up, selecting 11th overall, we have the Minnesota Wild, and I'm going to have them take the 2nd best defenseman in this draft for the United States National Team Development Program, Jake Sanderson. Now, Sanderson has skyrocketed up the rankings here, according to NHL Central Scouting. Obviously, he's moved up substantially here in the last few months. In the most recent one, which was their final rankings here, they have him as 4th best in North America, which I think is a little high. He does appear to be a pretty solid defensive prospect, and I think he'd be a good fit for Minnesota, who's going to be needing some younger defensemen to be coming into the mix to have high-end potential, and I think Sanderson has a solid top 4. I'm not sure he can be top pair, but definitely top 4 for sure. He's 6'1.5", 185 pounds. He put up 29 points this past year, 47 games played. Overall, he's looked upon as being a reliable D who can move the puck well. He's a pretty good skater, makes smart plays, pretty good gap control, and many feel, at least up until recently, that he was going to be a second pair NHL defenseman. You never know, maybe he'll surprise us and have a little bit more of a well-rounded game. He is the son of former NHL player Jeff Sanderson, and looks to be one of the faster risers here towards the end of the year. Next up, selecting 12th overall, we have the Winnipeg Jets, and I have them taking one of the better pure goal scorers in this draft from the Ottawa 67's, Jack Quinn. Now, Jack Quinn's another player who's certainly been on the rise a lot this past year. He was recently ranked 7th by NHL Central Scouting amongst North American skaters. He's 6 feet tall, 176 pounds, pretty solid winger, put up 89 points, which includes 52 goals, playing with the 67s. Of course, he's a teammate of Marco Rossi, who we had go up a few other spots here in the draft. But Quinn certainly could be known as one of the better pure snipers in this draft class, and Quinn would be a great fit, in my opinion, with the Winnipeg Jets. Next up, selecting 13th overall, we have the New York Rangers, and I have them selecting forward Dawson Mercer from Chicoutimi of the QMJHL. Now, Dawson Mercer is one of those players who certainly had a pretty solid year, put up 60 points in 42 games, but he was traded late in the season, and after the trade, he did not really adjust to the new team overly well, so his production did drop a bit, and in many people's eyes, his draft stock dropped a little bit, but personally, I'm going to cut him a little bit of slack. I think he's a tremendous offensive talent. He's a hardworking guy who many feel will be a solid top 6 winger at the NHL. He's 6 feet tall right now, around 178 pounds. Overall, like I said, had a pretty solid year. NHL Central Scouting had him ranked as the 10th best skater in North America. I would probably put him up more like 7-8 range myself. So overall, I think Mercer would be a terrific fit here with the Rangers organization. Next up, selecting 14th overall, we have the Florida Panthers, and we have them selecting from the WHL's Portland Winterhawks forward Seth Jarvis, who's another undersized center iceman, but tremendous offensive abilities. He's just shy of 5'10", 175 pounds. He put up 98 points this year in the WHL in 58 games, which includes 42 goals. I mean, he's one of the more underrated players, in my opinion. Jarvis was ranked 11th best skater in North America by NHL Central Scouting. Again, like Mercer, I think they both should have been up a little higher. They had a couple defensemen ranked ahead of them that I just don't think are going to be as solid and should be down a little bit here. But overall, Jarvis just doesn't seem to get enough attention compared to a lot of these players for some reason. But he has been one of the more hot draft-eligible prospects since the start of the year, putting up all kinds of points. He's a hard worker, a dangerous offensive talent with speed and skill to burn, and I think he'd be a tremendous addition to the Florida Panthers. Next up, selecting 15th overall, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I have them selecting the first player from the NCAA from Wisconsin, Dylan Holloway, who's a pretty good center iceman, 6'1.5" tall, 203 pounds, left shot, put up 17 points in 35 games in his first year of college hockey. Now, this is kind of a unique, special case because players like Holloway and others who played college hockey before being drafted, they're playing with a lot of guys that are much older, so it's a whole different beast than playing junior hockey. So the fact that he was able to put up this kind of production does speak good volumes to how good he can be. He could likely play there with Wisconsin for a couple more years before turning pro. He's kind of gone up and down a little bit with the ranking systems this year. He was ranked a little higher at one point earlier in the season, kind of dropped down, come back up a little bit. But Holloway, I think, will be a solid addition to the Columbus Blue Jackets. They can be patient with him, let him play a couple more years of college hockey before he turns pro. So thanks for following along with this simulation for the top 15 selections. Certainly let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section, and we can continue discussing these selections. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. As always, I hope you're staying healthy and safe, and I will catch you next time.